Such sense. Let's hope so. Let's put him to the test. He's with us right now. Good morning, Mr. Buckley.
Good morning, Mr. Chapman. I must say your listener is a very sweet man. Most people don't think I talk that much sense.
No, I thought maybe it was what?
He's a close friend of mine, as it
Yeah,
happens.
I thought, oh, Mickey's discovered email. But 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 no, he did mean it actually. And to be fair, he is absolutely correct. Obviously, I'm buttering you up now, as you know. This is what you do on telly. But every time you've been on so far, you've been a great help. We've got around 10 minutes to chat to you. Let's just get straight into it, Michael. Finian's Rainbow runs this weekend in the Victor Chandler Chase. He's won his last two at Kempton and, of course, back in April at Aintree. What do you make of his chance this weekend?
Well, I hope he's got a good chance. Certainly, if he's any pretensions to run in the champion chase, he should have a good chance of winning this, all being well. He is a somewhat changed character this year, having been a bit of a tearaway and always wanting to rush off in front, be it in a race or get to the front in a race or on the gallop. He's a much more laid-back soul. And which is why you'll have seen he's had other entries at Cheltenham, just in case Saturday turns into some kind of a fiasco, which I sincerely hope it won't. Anyway, in theory, he'll run there, and if all goes well, go for the champion chase.
So what you're saying is, he's doing a little bit of a long run. He's quietening down because he was a bit of a hothead.
He's quietened down very, very considerably. The first time I noticed it, because he's a horse that I'm absurdly fond of, and I love to go and see him in the field a few times in the summer. And until this last summer, I couldn't get anywhere near him in the field, and neither could anybody else, other than my girlfriend was the one, and the chap where he spends the summer said, "Oh gosh, I wish you'd come and help us catch him when it's time to come in." She could go and pat him, but he wouldn't let any man get anywhere near him.
And he sounds just like a good judge to me.
Well, he was quite a good judge, but anyway, he's showing different tendencies in life now, as some chaps do. And now he's very happy to be patted by men.
Oh dear! So he's turned. Is that what you're saying?
Well, I don't know, but but it is interesting how he's changed. And I noticed I went up and I put my arm around his neck and patted him, and he's changed in his work too. He's very laid back. You can ride him in behind horses, and obviously when I saw him work on Saturday, David Bass rode him, and when sort of pulled him out, he joined the other workhorses. But previously was always tugging at the bit, and I think you saw that at Kempton. He was sort of lobbing along quietly in the front, not pulling as it happens, and then these other horses arrived on the scene. I was actually away, and I saw it on a computer recording later that night, but I think he sort of got a shock to suddenly find these other horses were there. He'd just been minding his own business quietly and made that terrible mistake.
I mean, that's crucial for him, though, isn't it? Because for those who will argue against Finian's Rainbow in a champion chase away from this weekend, their argument was that he'll run freely, but he might struggle to get up the hill, which they could argue he did against Captain Chris, I guess, in March of last year. But it sounds like their argument could be flawed if the horses, for want of a better phrase, change personality a little bit.
Well, that would be entirely my view. I mean, there are, people who are saying, "God, I wish he'd calm down a bit," from last year, and now saying, "Oh, well, I'm not sure I have the speed." And my view is, you wanted him to calm down, and he didn't, and he was always doing so much early on, and I'm sure that's why Captain Chris, who is no disrespect to him, he's a bloody good horse, but did outstay him, and I think if the horse had done much less earlier on in the race, it would have been tougher for Captain Chris to beat him. And by the same token, well, of course, the race would have been of a completely different type. But in the position he was in Kempton, if he'd been running as free this year as last and had been in the same situation he was with 3 to go, he wouldn't have had the energy left to come back and win at the line as he did. So I'm personally pleased to see it, and my own view is that you're not going to win a champion chase if you don't stay 2.5 miles anyway. They're going to go a hell of a pace. They always do at Cheltenham, and if you look at Sizing Europe, he stayed 3 miles. I mean, he's nearly at the top of the Irish 3-mile chases. So he isn't going to win the champion chase if he doesn't stay, but better than he did last year anyway, in my view.
And do you look at Saturday's race and do you look at the opposition, or do you just think to yourself, well, I've got a very good horse, I've got a good chance? Have you gone through it and thought, oh, I'm scared of, I don't know, Summersby or Corto Stone, or do you just concentrate on your boy?
Well, I concentrate on him, but obviously I wouldn't be human if I didn't look at what he's running against.
Yeah, sure.
And think, what do I think my chances are?
Who do you fear?
Well, who do I fear? Seriously, I think that if he was back to his very best, I think wishful thinking would be in danger.
Yeah.
If he was back to his very best, I mean, he is a 2.5 miler and he's quick. He hadn't shown much in his first 2 runs this year. He also made a mistake at the same time, and I guess it might have gone either way then, really, at Kempton. I'm putting on myself on a hiding to nothing here if I start going through the whole field.
Yeah, don't do
but
that.
When you look at them as a whole, they tend to be horses that all need more than 2 miles, don't they? Each one of them. I mean, Alpha Off, actually, there's another case in point. If Spirit Sun had known a bit more, hadn't been quite as gassy coming down the hill at Cheltenham, and been a bit more streetwise, he had only had 4 runs in his life going into Cheltenham, and he'd never had a real horse race. But he was another one where exactly the same thing happened in the race before the Arkle, where he got outstayed by Alpha Off. And I'd imagine that Alpha Off will stay well, whether or not he's a real 2-miler or whether he's a 2.5 miler, I'm none too sure. But Paul Nicholls would tell you more. Cato Stone, I actually do think wants further. I mean, I know he won over 2.5 in Ireland in very heavy ground, but in France he was always running over 2.25, 2.5, 2.75 miles. I wouldn't see him as a 2-miler really, not a specialist 2-miler.
Then you got
Summersby, you'd imagine, needs further now, and so if
it's a good race.
Finian's Rainbow is the 2-mile horse he was last year, and with and stays a little bit better, you'd imagine he'd have an outstanding chance. Well, I would anyway, but I am very, very, very biased.
Well, it is a cracking renewal. We've got about 5 minutes left, Michael. So obviously I want to rattle through a couple. Spirit Sun, we keep telling he's about to run. He hasn't yet. As far as is the Irish Champion Hurdle going to be his race before Cheltenham? What's going on?
I think it'll come too soon, Matt.
Right. Would you rule him out of it at the moment, Michael? I get the feeling he's not running.
I wouldn't. I mean, I believe that he may have a racecourse gallop later this week.
Right.
Which will obviously tell Nicky a lot more about where he is with the horse. He's definitely fine. I mean, people worried if he would even make a racecourse, but touch wood, at the moment he's fine. I saw him work on Saturday as well as I was down there, and but I suspect, I'm not ruling him out, but I suspect if the Irish Champion Hurdle was 10 days later, he might well make it. I would think it's less likely. I'm not ruling him out entirely, because that wouldn't be fair and right, and I don't know. But I'd say it's doubtful.
Okay.
I think he'll probably run a week or 10 days after that somewhere, maybe in that race Sandown the following weekend.
And we spoke to Nicky while you were away. He does seem still very bullish about this horse, that this horse has a lot of natural ability, to the extent that he was almost more glowing about the natural talent more than Binocular and his other good sort of Champion Hurdle hospets like Grand Douay. So, clearly the trainer thinks you've got something a bit special.
Well, I suppose Binocular is a known case for everybody, isn't it? I mean, everybody, will have a view about Binocular because he's been around a lot longer. Grand Duet is a terrific horse, and I think he finished 3rd in the Triumph, didn't he?
Yeah, Grand Duet, yeah.
And was desperately unlucky not to beat Zarkandar at Aintree. I mean, if that horse hadn't fallen in front of him, I'm sure he would have beaten Zarkandar on what I was watching anyway. Then went and won at Punchestown. So he's super tough. He's come out. He probably would have beaten Celestial Halo if he hadn't fallen the first time. I'm going to make a lot of unpopular fans here, or not fans, by saying all these things. But he probably would have done, and he won the Royal Sports very, very comfortably at Cheltenham. So he's a hugely improved horse. from last year.
But Nicky thinks you're right up there.
I'd like to say one thing about Spirit Summit. I mean, I think he is a very talented horse. And if you own a horse, you've got to look at the optimistic. And I hang my hat on one simple fact that I noticed that Rock on Ruby is rated 165, I think, officially, which is about £7 behind Hurricane Fly. Well, I know it's a different day and a different track and a different year even, but he was beaten 20 lengths by Spirit Summit at Aintree. So.
Yeah. Okay, well,
Barry always said, before Cheltenham, that he just felt that the race might come a bit early for him, that he was a bit babyish. And, he hadn't got in any kind of a fight on a race course previously, so he'd done it all very easily, and he was probably a bit naive about.
Okay.
And it's a shame actually that he's going to go to Cheltenham this year again with very little addition to his experience. It would have been great if he could have run in the Greatwood, say, which was the original plan, and then had another run and been a bit more streetwise. But it is what it is.
Well, we can't wait to see him. Michael, literally, I have 1 minute left because I have to be off air at 57 for the next programme to start at 12 o'clock. But I've got 2 emails for you in literally one word. Alan says, glad you're speaking to Michael. Can you ask him why his horse is called Mossley? I live in a town called Mossley, and I'm surprised a southerner would name a horse after a northern town. Maybe he was already named. Can you ask Michael about the name, please? You've got about 10 seconds, Michael.
He was owned by a fellow in the Northern Ireland, and he was named after a village next. Sorry, that's not more than one word, but that's it.
OK. And Ben says, can you just please ask Mr. Buckley about a horse called Hammersley Lake?
Hammersley Lake is a good horse. He's got a slight problem at the moment. I'm hoping he'll come right in time to run in the Triumph. But again, the jury's out the second.
And, of course, you've got other good horses, which we haven't got time to ask you about now. But Let's Get Serious looks promising as well, doesn't he? So it's exciting times, Michael. Look, we'll keep our fingers crossed. I know Ascot hasn't always been your lucky track. Let's hope it's lucky once again for you, though, this weekend. And can I just say, I could talk to you for an hour, which is good news for you that we have strict timings on our shows, because otherwise you'd be here all day. But thanks very much for coming on the show once again.
My pleasure. Nice to talk to you.
That's terrific stuff from Michael Buckley. As I say, he's just one of those characters you could literally speak to all day. If we did, I'd be sacked.